Elizabeth, so we're here at a recovery slash yoga slash meditation retreat. What brought you here?
Well, what brought me here was deepening into my own recovery. I'm recovering from 32 years of being on opioid medication and benzodiazepines, treating chronic pain. It was all prescription medication from doctors. That was their answer for chronic pain. It changes the brain. Chronic pain changes the brain. Addiction changes the brain. I went into a pain management program and was actually able to get off the medication and learn how to deal with pain outside of medication. So the good news here is that you can heal from chronic pain. I didn't even know that. My doctors didn't know that. All they knew was to give me pain medication, right?
I heard you say that people are addicted to chronic pain. Is that right? That you've heard some people are?
Yes, you can be in relationship with pain. I would say that I was a chronic pain addict. I was lost in my own misery. But this is what it's like. This was what it was like for me. I had a lot of physical pain. Underneath of all that was a lot of emotional pain that I didn't even recognize. I didn't know it at the time, but I held it. That was my pattern. My whole family held their pain. They held everything that was uncomfortable. They just held it and pushed through, right? So what happened to me was I hurt all the time, and the solution, the medication, even hatha yoga and massage and acupuncture, all those things, they kind of helped a little bit, but they didn't release me. And so I felt like I was in a prison, and I couldn't find the key to the door. I couldn't even find the door. So what does that say? I couldn't get out of that place, and nobody around me could help me get out. Yeah. So that's a place of hopelessness. And if I hadn't had a very deep connection to spirit and the divine or God or whatever you want to call that higher power, I don't think I'd be here. And I really at the last hour was when I went into treatment. It was either go into treatment or check out, because it was that bad. I didn't even know that there was anybody out there that could help with chronic pain. I knew that there were people that could help get off the meds. I didn't know anybody to get me off fentanyl. The doctors that put me on it, they couldn't get me off it without putting me in a coma. And I'm like, how many have you done that with? We haven't done it before. Oh, so I'm going to be your guinea pig? So, right? I was in this weird corner, and I just didn't trust anybody. By the time I went to treatment and into this chronic pain management program, I just took a jump. It was a total leap of faith, because I had no idea, except that if I didn't go, that I wasn't going to make it.
What was worse for you, the physical pain or the mental pain?
The emotional pain was worse for me. It always has been. I never knew how to deal with it. There was no instruction. There was just sweep it under the carpet, don't mention it, push through life as gratefully as possible, do not talk to anyone about it, and do not show how you feel. Right? So that's a lot to carry.
Yeah. So when people have emotional pain, how much in your experience, in your life, and how you work with other people now that have chronic pain, how much of that physical pain is caused by mental pain? Is the mental pain a way of trying to, or the physical pain a way of trying to avoid the mental pain, or how would you describe it?
I would say this. I would say let's define chronic pain. Chronic pain is any pain, physical, emotional, or spiritual. It doesn't matter to the brain. It sends the same signal. It hurts to the brain. So 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more, that's chronic. So the statistics are that 25% of us have that. And so the brain can't distinguish between one and the other. My experience is that what got me into chronic pain, I had an injury but I was holding so much emotional pain that I never healed from the physical injury, right? I just wasn't able to. I had, they call it an allostatic load. It's a stress load, and I had such a high amount of stress by the time that accident came along that hurt my back. I never healed from it. That's an issue. So there was a lot of emotional pain under there and a lot of behaviors around how to deal with the world, right? How to meet the world. I met the world by pushing through and pushing harder. And that's not always optimal, right? Right. Better to go with the flow. I didn't even know what the flow was.
When did you know you were an addict?
Oh, that's a great question, because I was on medication for, I'm trying to think now. I was on medication maybe for 4 or 5 years, and the doctor said, you have to get off. And they just said, get off. They didn't give me they just said, get off. So it took me about 2 weeks to titrate down, no problem. I still had pain, but I didn't have the shakes and all that. I didn't have that. When I got on the fentanyl in 1999, so I started medication, and they started putting me on medication in like 1982. That's a long time. 1999, the fentanyl started. That was a problem. It was a problem before. I was on MS-Contin. That was really scary. So that was a drug that was supposed to be a long-acting version of oxycodone, and so it's they were ready for 12 hours. So I took it every 12 hours, as written. And here's the problem. I would take the pill, and about half an hour later, I would get an effect, I would get some relief, and it would last about 2 hours. And then I sat and watched the clock for the next, 9.5 hours. That right there, and I was like this, I need my medication, right? So can you imagine how much more pain I made in my body just from doing that, right? That thing is the perfect prescription for addiction.
Wow. How would you define addiction? What is it?
Well, I like Tommy's definition, which is any behavior you continue to do that has negative consequences on your life. It covers so many things. This is not just about drugs. It's about how are you relating to whatever it is you're relating to? What is that relationship? It's about that. That relationship that you have, it doesn't matter whether it's with a person, whether it's with yourself, whether it's with a coconut, whether it's with drugs. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you're relating to it. Do you absolutely have to have it every minute? Are you craving it? What is are you able to go without it? What's your energy around it?
Now obviously you've described what it did for you and what it did to you. If you could maybe elaborate on, I think of addiction in a lot of ways as a solution. It's a solution to pain. It's a solution to escape a lot of stuff. It's a way to cope. How would you describe what addiction took from you and what it did for you?
I would say this. In a very kind of deeper sense, to get under, because for me, I needed to get to the root of what is causing all this behavior in the first place. So there was a void. There was I need this thing. I don't know what it is, but I'm looking for it, right? Which is really a spiritual connection. It's like really being aware. We're always connected, but we're not always aware that we're connected. I'm looking for that, and I can't find it. I couldn't find it in my family. I couldn't find it in my friends, my teachers. When I was a kid, I couldn't find it anywhere, except I had an idea. And I always ask this question, there's this physical world and there's this spiritual world, and do they meet? I was asking that question when I was 4 years old, and people were looking at me and going, don't ask that question, and we don't want to hear that. And they would just look away. The looking away is the problem. We're not looking here. We're looking out there. We're looking away. We're looking to drugs. We're looking to even a walk in nature. You can even get addicted to that. Anything that's not that inner fire, that inner spirit. Not looking. If we're going in that direction, to me that's we're trying to fill the void from there. when it's really here.
Right.
So my best spiritual teachers have always pointed me back to myself.
Well, how would you define connection? I mean, how do you know when you are
I love that
disconnected?
question. I love that question because I've got the science thing in me and I've got the spiritual thing, and I like to kind of be a bridge. So I would call connection being present, like just staying in the present moment and being aware and allowing what's there, right? So I'm inside of this morning doing my practice, and I'm feeling a little tension and heat and pressure in my spine from yesterday's work, and I can fight with that if I choose to. It's a choice. I can fight with it, or I can just breathe and be present with it and notice it and allow it to be there. That is that connection. And you know what happens when that happens? When I just meet it where it is and allow it to be, it goes, and it just, all that tension that was in my back just dissipated. That's an example of connection. It's very real. It's not some like fluffy thing in the sky, and it's not all, some of it's out there, but it's in here too. We can't get away from it. We just don't see it a lot.
So someone's watching this and they're hopeless, so they feel that they've tried everything and they don't know what to do, and they're at a point where they just want to check out. What would you say to them if they're hopeless?
The first thing I would say is we can heal from this. We can heal. It is possible. So many of us don't realize that, right? I was there. I knew it myself. It was by the grace of God, really, I'm here. So we can heal from that. And then the next thing I would say is get help. There are treatment centers, and there are plenty of people that have been down this path that can help guide you along the way. It is doable. A lot of us think it's not doable, but it absolutely is.
What would you have told yourself when you were in the throes of addiction? Say, how many years ago was your worst place where you were just...
Right before I went into treatment. It was 2013, the summer of 2013 was a very scary time.
Okay. Prior to that, say a decade before that, if you had a crystal ball and you knew where your life was going to go unless someone intervened, what would you have told your younger self?
I would have told my younger self, you can do this. You can actually heal. You can heal from this, and you have the power within to do it. It's within you. I mean, we need to do this in community, but truly the power to heal is within us. And I never saw that until I actually experienced it.
I would be okay to talk to you about powerlessness, because it's a word. So when you say the power is within you, and then in 12 steps, the first step talks about we're powerless over our alcohol, our addiction, our sex, our gambling, our whatever, and that our lives have become unmanageable. What's the difference between the power we have versus powerlessness that they speak of in many recovery circles?
Oh, that's a great question. When I hear that, what I hear is I hit a bottom where I just totally gave up. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't fight with it anymore. It's got me. It's totally got me. So I surrender, and that is a huge piece for me. Like, I don't surrender to freaking anybody. Right. So the fact that I actually went like that, that's what that speaks to me. And when we do that, we get our power back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's a very interesting way to look at it, because so many people that fight it, they're like, I'm not going to give my power away, I'm not going to give my power away. And then you'll hear people say, well, quit trying to play God. When you think you're so powerful that you can, do this on your own, you're playing God. But then it comes in the element of people that they have such a God issue. And I would say even myself, I've had the hardest time. One of my most difficult journeys in recovery has just been wanting to connect with that higher power. Is there a God? What does someone do if they're an atheist? So I'd love to get your perspective on what spirituality is. It's a charged word, as is the word God. And many people that are, have grown up either in a very sort of religious sort of environment, or they've pursued spirituality, or they've spent, hundreds, if not thousands of hours of their life trying to worship, trying to pray, to, in their minds, no avail. What what is this thing? What is this thing?
Yeah.
Where is it? Where does it exist?
Yeah.
Is it in the skies? This supreme intelligence? How would you, anything that you could speak
Yeah,
to about the God
that's a
issue?
great question. I love that. That's the way I was raised. I was raised that God is out there. He's wrathful, so he's an attitude, and it's kind of unpredictable. And I'm like, oh my God, right? That but out there, and always elusive. But here's the thing. I've had some experiences. I said I've had kind of this connection my whole life, been aware of some kind of like greater power thing. I've been in a tornado. So I've felt the power of this and how insignificant I am in all of it, right? So that puts things in perspective, like, boom, for me right away. There's something so much more powerful than me. Get with the program, Elizabeth, right? So that's helpful. Now, the science part of me, the thinking part of me, not the hard part, but the thinking part of me wants kind of a solution. What is this spiritual thing? And I want it to be grounded and real. And then there's all this, so over here, this spiritual stuff, and where's the bridge? The bridge for me is in the quantum world. When I saw quantum physics, learned about that the first time, I went, Eureka, that's where they meet, finally. Oh my God, I finally got my question answered, right? So again, it's in the present moment. The quantum world, oh my God. So in the quantum world, everything exists past, present, future at the same time. What a concept. That's spiritual. That's the spiritual world. Yeah. Also, the thing about now, this being in this present moment, it's this quantum concept, right? So that for me is a huge chunk for me to be able to rest in that. And then the other piece of it is, remember we all began in stars, right? We all began as stars. Everything around us is star stuff, and it just keeps getting on this planet. It keeps getting recycled. So the atoms that were in you and the atoms that were in me, they've been traveling around this planet for generations after generations for a long, long time. What is that? We are in the net. We are in this beautiful web, and we can't be dropped if we wanted to. Right? That's spiritual, but it's also science. Right? So that's where I live, in that place.
Out of all the tools of recovery that are available, which ones that you have done and that you've seen others use work that you would highly recommend that others explore or try?
Yeah, understanding that chronic pain and addiction change the brain. Meditation, because meditation is that space where we allow the brain to rest and it can heal in that space. It's hugely important. It's massively important. Diet is another huge thing. I did a whole thing on my diet, total rehaul on my diet, and physical exercise. I have a lot of energy, so I need to constructively focus that in a helpful way, because I could go all over the place with that, and it's better if I stay in my lane, right? So those are three right off the top.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Great questions.
Thank you. Awesome.